So thank you, Ms. Claire. Thank you, you personally, and Schiller International University. This webinar on Pakistan-France bilateral relations. I would also like to thank Mr. André de Bussy, who has joined us today, and since he has served in Islamabad for long, so I think we'll have a constructive discussion after I have presented my view on these relations. I understand that I'm speaking to young students, young minds, and it is always a pleasure to share our viewpoint and our ideas about this important aspect that we'll discuss today. I also understand that our young students may have also formed some opinion about Pakistan, some perception about Pakistan they might have gathered from the television, from the newspapers, from the internet. And in addition to what I'm going to say about Pakistan-France bilateral relations, I would also like to present some additional information to them so that they are better informed about Pakistan. And then, of course, in the course of our engagement in discussion, if they have any questions, I would be most happy to answer them. I'll begin with political relations between the two countries. Basically, the political relations between Pakistan and France are mainly conducted by the two foreign ministries. And in this regard, the foreign secretaries of the called bilateral political consultations, of which 13 rounds have taken place. In this dialogue, what happens is that in addition to key bilateral aspects of the relationship, a host of regional issues and international issues are also discussed. And in addition to that, of course, we have our Pakistani embassy in Paris and French embassy in Islamabad. They continuously liaise with the host governments to have better understanding and to come up with projects to further this bilateral relationship. Another important aspect of the political relationship between the two countries is parliamentary contacts and exchanges. Both the countries have friendship groups in the senates and national assemblies, what we call Pakistan-France friendship groups. And before COVID started, these groups actually, they have been visiting each other's country for the last 3-4 years. And that was a constant dialogue and exchange that helped actually people-to-people contacts and to have a better understanding about the two countries' perspective on a wide range of issues. Now I come to the second important aspect of our bilateral ties, and this is the defense relationship between Pakistan and France. Well, some of you might be aware that Pakistan Air Force has a large number of French-built Mirage aircraft, and Pakistan Navy has these French-built Augusta submarines. So you would know that when such undertakings takes place, these result in very long-standing relationships, because if a certain country buy aircraft or submarines from another country, then they're basically entering into a long-standing relationship, which includes trainings, upgrades, visits of officials between the two countries. So this aspect is still going on between the two countries, and if I add to it, there are some institutional mechanism between the defense people of the two countries in which they continuously engage and meet each other on annual basis. The third important aspect of our bilateral ties is linkages in trade, economy, and investment. Bilateral trade between Pakistan and France currently stands at $1.46 billion, out of which Pakistan's exports to France amount to nearly $1 billion, and imports from France to Pakistan, they amount to around $400 million. So the major French exports to Pakistan, they include pharmaceutical goods, electrical apparatus, aircraft parts, and major exports, Pakistan's exports to France, they include basically textiles, clothing, rice, leather goods, and some fruits and vegetables also. In the past few years, both the countries, they actually upgraded this economic relationship to a ministerial level joint economic commission. We have already formed it and we are looking forward to its first inaugural meeting soon. You might also be aware that many French companies, leading French companies, actually more than around 40, they are doing business in Pakistan. These include Total, Sanofi, Aventis, Vinci, Carrefour, Engie, L'Oreal. These are some of the big names that are already present in Pakistan. And recently, in the last few months, actually, some more development has taken place. Peugeot is working with the Pakistani partner to build the first French like SUV Peugeot 2008, which would be introduced into the Pakistani market in around, I think, September, October this year. Paul, the famous bakery chain, bakery confectionery chain, it opened its first outlet in Karachi some 2 months ago. And in addition, we have this Accor Hotel. They are already present in Pakistan. They've acquired some properties and they are willing to enhance their business ties with Pakistan. Likewise, there's a Pakistani pharmaceutical company called Martin Dow. It is that Pakistani company has actually invested in France and they have bought 2 pharmaceutical factories here in France. And the French Agency for Development, what we call AFD, is also working in Pakistan for the last 12 to 15 years. And they have undertaken several projects related to energy and urban development. And they're also interested in some cultural heritage projects also. May I also share with you that, some information about the Pakistani startups. It would be a pleasant surprise to you that the startup scene is very sort of vibrant in Pakistan. Pakistani startups have raised around $85 million from the international market this year, and this is an area where we are looking for more cooperation between the two countries. In terms of education linkages between Pakistan and France, I would like to inform you that Campus France, the French agency that is responsible for attracting foreign students to French universities, it has been working with the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan for the last many years. There have been regular exchanges and visits between the two agencies, and at present around 800 Pakistani students are currently studying in French university. Most of them are from the scholarships that are offered by the government of Pakistan. Some are on their own private funding, and there are some who have been offered French scholarships also. So we are looking forward for much more enhancement especially in this area. Another area that we are working on and would like to have more focus is the environment and climate change. You might be knowing that Pakistan hosted World Climate Day recently in cooperation with the United Nations, and there is a lot of focus of the Pakistani government headed by Prime Minister Imran Khan on this environment and climate change issue. We have this interesting program going on in Pakistan, which is called 10 Billion Tree Tsunami or 10 Billion Tree Afforestation Program. And you might be surprised to know that up till now, this program, which has been running for the last 3 years, Pakistan has planted 1 billion new trees across the country. So it is a great achievement, and we aim to increase it to 10 billion. And this achievement has been acknowledged by the international agencies and international partners that are focusing on climate change. Another interesting area of cooperation between the two countries is in the field of archaeology. The French archaeological mission has been working in Pakistan since 1950s, and that mission has been instrumental in some of the great finds in our country. And one of it was this Mehergarh site, which is estimated to belonging to 7000 BC. It is said to be one of the oldest civilization or the oldest sites in the world. And I would like to add to this that since the French mission is here, Pakistan has a rich history of diverse civilizations, ranging from one of the world's oldest civilization, what we call the Indus Valley civilization, which is known for its urban planning and baked brick houses, elaborate drainage and water supply system. It is said to be dating back to 26th century BC. There is also this Gandhara civilization, which is related to Buddhism, and it is from 185 BC. Pakistan is also home to 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. At the same time, we have some important sacred sites of the major religions of the world. For Buddhist heritage, for Sikh heritage, and even some sites from the Hindu religion also are present in Pakistan that are of great cultural and historical value. This basically now I've touched upon the major aspects of our bilateral relationship. At this point, you must be wondering that I have informed you about the bilateral relations, but some of you who may not have enough knowledge of the country must be wondering as to how the country looks like. What's the topography of the country? Everybody is interested in these questions. So let me share with you some interesting facts about Pakistan. And I would like to make a small comparison between France and Pakistan at this stage. Of course, I've been living in France for many years. And if I look at the French landscape, I can see the mountains in the Alps, valleys, plateaus, these sea line, the Mediterranean, and also the Atlantic. So similarly, if I make a comparison with the Pakistani topography, you would be amazed to see the difference. Of course, Pakistan has mountains. We have the Karakoram range, the Himalayan range, the Hindu Kush range. But our mountains in that part of what we call Gilgit-Baltistan, they're much higher than what we have in Europe. As a comparison, you would know that Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Europe, is like 4,800 meters. And if I compare it with the height of K2, which is the second tallest mountain in the world, and it is situated in Pakistan, the K2's base camp actually is at 5,150 meters. So it means that when you are at the top of the Mont Blanc, you are still lower than the base camp of K2. So it's a very interesting, you can imagine the size of the mountains Pakistan have. Similarly, what we call 8,000ers, there are 14 peaks in the world that are higher than 8,000 meters. Out of those 14 peaks, Pakistan has 5 of them. And at the same time, we have these vast deserts, and we have these beautiful valleys and plains where agriculture is done. And interestingly, we have 4 distinct seasons in Pakistan. It's unlike Europe, where seasons tend to merge with one another. So in Pakistan, it's like one season ends and the next starts. It's like that, basically. It's not like spring and summer will continue at the same time that you have sometimes in Europe, in many parts of the Europe. So these are distinct seasons in Pakistan. And an interesting feature that I would like to share with you is at one day in summertime, you can have at one place, at one part of, like in Sindh or lower southern Punjab, you can have a temperature of, say, around 48 to 50 degrees. And if the same day you travel towards the mountains, take a flight and go into the mountains, in the same day you may reach a place where you have sub-zero temperature. So that's the an amazing sort of range of temperature that you find in the single country. And now any discussion about Pakistan, you see, cannot be completed without talking about our cuisine, our music scene, our fashion scene. So Pakistani cuisine is famous all over the world. Even in Paris, there are tens of restaurants, Pakistani restaurants actually, that offer good quality Pakistani food. We have in Paris a 2 Michelin star chef who is of Pakistani origin. And when I talk about the Qawwali and Sufi music, you would be like amazed or surprised that many French tourists who go to Pakistan, they actually sometimes they only go to these Sufi shrines and to listen to these Qawwalis and Sufi music. And the legendary, the maestro, you might have heard his name, the late Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. At one time, he was very famous all around the world for his Qawwali, new Qawwali style, in which he mixed the modern music also. So he is said to have had performed his first international concert outside Pakistan in Paris actually. But at the same time, we have this modern, like modern music scene also, and a mix of classical and modern music also. And talking about fashion, we have a very vibrant and diverse fashion scene in Pakistan. Some of the world's most famous designers, they have taken inspiration from our Peshawari chappal, from the very famous truck art from Pakistan, and the Pakistani ladies, the way they dress up for our marriage functions. So it's a beautiful scene, the sort of dresses that are worn, and it all adds to our fashion scene. Now a few words before I complete it about the tourism potential of the country. I wonder if some of you have visited Pakistan or not, but there is a lot of focus from the government of Pakistan in promotion of tourism. And here in France, in Paris, actually, we are giving it a lot of attention. Before the onset of COVID, actually, we had opened a tourism promotion office in the embassy. We launched a French language tourism website called Découvrez Pakistan, and 12 French tour operators, they started just before COVID, they started offering tour packages for French tourists to Pakistan, and they were all booked actually. There was so much like enthusiasm in French tourists to go to this unexplored part of the world. We also held a photographic exhibition in the Luxembourg Gardens, which was seen by hundreds of people at that time. It was in 2018. And just to conclude, I would say a few words about the Pakistanis living in France. We have around 100,000 Pakistanis, more than 100,000 Pakistanis who live in France, mostly in the Paris suburbs, and they are doing a very good job in amalgamating in the French society. And they in the COVID, they offered social services such as providing food, medicines, and even they set up some free COVID test camps. And they are contributing to the French economy, to the French society in a very productive way. So here I would stop, and I hope that you have been able to get some more interesting information about the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Qazi. Thank you very much. You gave us a complete presentation of what we could expect if we were going to visit Pakistan. I just want to remind people online that you joined the Pakistan Foreign Service in 2001, and you have been working in Pakistan's mission also in Denmark, Belgium, South Africa, and now in France, where you are the chargé d'affaires. And now I'm going to give the floor to Mr. André de Bussy, who is going to complete your presentation. And Mr. de Bussy was the Cultural and the Cooperation Councillor for France in Islamabad between 2016 and 2020.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's difficult to add much to what my good friend Mr. Qazi just said about the Pakistan. If I take the overall picture, I've just spent 4 years, and Pakistan has been probably one of my most enlightening diplomatic experience in my career. By the magnitude of the country, it's a large country with a population of over 220 million, and it's growing. The natality growth is quite high. It's a country which has retained its cultural diversity, meaning that Pakistanis are able, unlike the French, to talk more than one language. They have Urdu, which is the official language, but in addition, all educated people who went to school speak English. And then in addition to this, they speak their regional language, Sindhi in the south, Punjabi in the center, Pashto in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and up north they also have other local languages. So everybody speaks at least 3 to 4 languages, hence their ability to grab more languages. So when they go to France or they go to French classes, they progress very fast, faster than anybody else. We have a network of Alliance Française in Pakistan, in Islamabad, Lahore and Karachi. We used to have another Alliance Française in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in the city of Peshawar, which is hopefully going to be relaunched soon. So the cultural exchanges between France and Pakistan are vivid. No matter how political relationships, changes of governments, difficulties, diplomatic we have, cultural exchange have been very high. As you mentioned earlier, there are more than 800 Pakistani students at the level of PhD currently studying in France. Pakistani are very good in engineering, science, IT, of course, and they do a lot of doctorate, PhD in France, in the best universities. So this is quite a vibrant cooperation. You've mentioned also historical cooperation in the field of archaeology, and most of the graduate, postgrads, and doctorate PhDs in archaeology of Pakistan, the directors of archaeological affairs, most of the directors of museums have been trained in France at La Sorbonne University. And this cooperation, with the support of the Musée Guimet and the Louvre Museum, is ongoing. We have also a very strong cooperation with the restoration in heritage of the fort of Lahore. Lahore is to Pakistan what Versailles is to France. It has been the most developed and famous court of the Mughal area in the whole of the subcontinent, from Genghis Khan to today's. The fort of Lahore represents what Pakistan has to offer in terms of culture. From this period to today, and today we are contributing heavily. France is also contributing to the restoration of the fortress, few millions euro of loan from the Alliance Française de Développement (AFD) to put the fort of Lahore back to its grandeur and its glory. So it's going to be probably first site of interest for tourism, international tourism, in terms of museums and forts, which will attract visitors from all over the world. In addition to what you presented before, which is the northern territory, and you've been very modest in saying the northern province of Pakistan looks like France. It is true, but 10 times bigger and 10 times more magnificent. If you compare the Alps with the summits, which I've visited many times, by the way, I've been fortunate to visit the northern territory of Pakistan. The French Alps look very small compared to the magnitude of the 8 of the 10 highest mountains of the world in the northern territory of Pakistan, so which makes it a heaven for mountaineers all over the world. And this is intact. This region of Pakistan is totally preserved from developments and pollution. It's intact. It's green. It has torrents. It has excellent food and fish from the rivers. It is outstanding. So I hope more French people and foreign visitors will visit this part of the country. I will stop here because I could be probably promoting Pakistan probably more than anyone else, and I will let my good friends Excellency Qazi to continue and perhaps answer questions which have been going to be asked. Certainly. Thank you.
Mr. Qazi, do you want to reply to Mr. de Bussy or complete his what he just did?
Yeah, just a few words, and actually, I would like to thank Mr. André for his comments and good words about Pakistan. And he has lived in Pakistan for long, and he's been fortunate enough to travel to these magnificent places, which he described so ably. And he's usually, when I say about diplomats or people living in Pakistan or who have been to Pakistan, I always make a comment that I am yet to meet a single person who has been to Pakistan and not influenced by the hospitality of the Pakistani people, or by the grandeur of its mountains, or by the rich cultural heritage of Pakistan, actually. So that means that Pakistan has much to offer to the international tourism, and we are actually looking forward that French students and French tourists, as soon as these COVID restrictions are eased, they should go and visit Pakistan. Thank you, Mr. André.
Mr. de Bussy, before working in Islamabad, you have been working on climate change and the Paris Agreement in Paris as a French diplomat. And I wanted to know how this topic is being handled with Pakistan as well in the relation between France and Pakistan.
Yes, Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries in terms of climate change. I think we are rating 5 or 6 in the world. So the question of climate change is a very burning issue. There's a lot of work has been done. You have mentioned the 10 billion tree program, which has started, but with the cooperation of a number of universities and Ministry of Climate Change of Pakistan, the Aga Khan Foundation, which is doing a tremendous work in the Northern Territories. These questions have been tackled. The delegation of Pakistan to the different, after the Paris Agreement, the different conference on climate change, including the next one, have been very vocal and strong, bringing diplomats, but also experts from climate change. So yes, it is a very burning issue. Yes, the authorities of Pakistan are taking it seriously. And yes, we cooperation with the UN, United Nations are also there, and they have to be furthered and developed. Yes.
Your Excellency, did you want to complete this topic?
Yeah, I just want to add a few more initiatives that have recently been launched by the government. We recently launched this electric vehicle policy, which offered concessional tariffs to increase share of clean vehicles in the country. And at the same time, there have been, of course, I've mentioned about this 10 billion tree program, out of which 1 billion trees have already been planted. The government has also set out elaborate plans to reduce carbon emissions from brick kilns. New dams are being constructed to supply clean energy instead of like coal-fired power plants. And all these basically these endeavors and these new initiatives, they reflect that the seriousness with which the current government is laying focus on climate change and environment. So it's a very high priority area for Pakistan and the government actually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one question from one of our faculty members at Schiller, who is asking to you, Mr. Qazi, could you please comment on any new developments on the Pakistan-France Joint Committee on Security? And what are the immediate concerns of Pakistan with respect to the regional security?
Actually, we have this institutional mechanisms between Pakistan and France about defense and security talks. Actually, I didn't actually get what the name was said, and these are basically annual talks that take place between the ministries of interior of both the countries, and sometimes the armed forces are also involved. So it's an ongoing process that has been going on for several years actually. So their meetings are held regularly. But as far as if I understood properly, you're asking about the regional security situation?
Yes.
Okay. So you know that the regional security situation facing Pakistan, we have like on the one hand we have India as our neighbor, and we have a long history of conflicts with India, and on the other hand we have Afghanistan as our neighbor, and the security situation that is developing in Afghanistan after this withdrawal of US and NATO forces. That's another challenge. So let me first say a few words about Pakistan-India relations. You know, Pakistan is desirous of having peaceful relations with all its neighbors, including India. But you know that we have this long-standing issue of Kashmir with India, what we call the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and so many like human rights violations are being committed in that region, and that has a direct impact on Pakistan-India ties. But recently, in the last few months, there have been some positive developments between the two countries, in the sense that the what we call the line of control, that's part of the border between, you can say, India and Pakistan, on which for the last 2 or 3 years, almost on daily basis, across the line of control, fighting from both sides were going on, and that has stopped actually in the past 2 months by an agreement between the two armies actually. So that's a positive development. And at the same time, on our last this Pakistan Day on 23rd of March, the Indian Prime Minister sent a message of congratulations to the Pakistani Prime Minister, and the Pakistani Prime Minister reciprocated them. So that was another positive development. But recently, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has made it clear that until there is a forward movement on the resolution of the Kashmir issue, Pakistan would wait some positive steps from India so that this relationship could be normalized. Now I turn to this second subject, what's going on in Afghanistan. As you know, that the international community is sort of worried that what will happen in Afghanistan once the US and NATO forces are completely withdrawn. So, and they're going to, and the process is going to complete in the coming months actually. So for Afghanistan, Pakistan has this position. Pakistan has always supported an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process. We have been facilitating the Afghan peace process. We have been instrumental in bringing the Taliban, the Afghan government, and other Afghan factions to the negotiating table, and we are pressing them that they should reach a political settlement so that when these foreign forces, they leave Afghanistan, so there is some sort of political settlement and no civil war ensues in the country. And we are playing a constructive role in this regard, and because we understand that unless there is peace in Afghanistan, there could not be peace in Pakistan. So that's in our national interest that we are making these efforts so that after so many decades, Afghan people, at least they should see a ray of hope, and they should settle their differences within themselves, all the Afghan factions, and so that once this withdrawal is completed, so there is peace and tranquility in Afghanistan. We're also looking forward to enhance our business linkages, our trade linkages with Afghanistan, and from Afghanistan to the Central Asian republics. So it's in our interest if there is peace in Afghanistan, and we are making all our efforts for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a question also from the public on a subject that has been very important here in France. There was a series of anti-French protests that occurred in Pakistan due to the Charlie Hebdo publishing issue. And the question is, can the two countries, Pakistan and France, find some middle ground on this issue? If you could answer to this question, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Okay, this is, of course, we all know what happened between Pakistan and France after Charlie Hebdo republished those blasphemous caricatures. And basically the two countries reached a situation in which what we say that we have an honest difference of opinion on this particular issue actually. On the one hand is Pakistan's viewpoint, in which we say that the freedom of expression comes with some sense of responsibility. We say that the religious figures and religious symbols, including our very beloved Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, they should not be insulted in the garb of freedom of expression or freedom of speech. And on the other hand is the French position, which is of course rooted in the French culture, in the French understanding that the freedom of expression should be unfettered without any restrictions. So basically it's an impasse that because there is difficulty in finding a middle ground on this specific issue. But during this whole period, in the last some 10 months, both Pakistan and France, they have been engaged diplomatically so that both the countries could understand each other's viewpoint. So we have been, myself here in Paris and the French ambassador in Islamabad with the two concerned foreign ministries, we have been engaged throughout this period, and we are trying that both the countries would ultimately able to reconcile their differences. Of course, this is a larger issue actually. So it is much larger, I would say, even the two countries, because it's not not a matter between just two countries, but an overall, because there is so much conceptual things attached to it. So now what Pakistan is doing, it is trying to like settle this issue at the international forums, so that we understand that such acts that hurt the feelings of more than a billion Muslim population around the world, they should be like, people who do it should be discouraged, and there should be some laws in the Western countries where such things happen are made, so that the harmony and the sort of the atmosphere of friendship between communities should prevail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Mr. André de Bussy, would you like to reply to this topic as well?
I would like to add a few comments. As a former diplomat in Islamabad, I witnessed, in fact, these tensions that you are mentioning. And one thing which strikes me is the difficulty to understand the notion of laïcité. Laïcité doesn't translate. First, as you know, you're in France. It's a concept which is actually proper in France. It's difficult to explain it, it's difficult to translate, and it's difficult to interpret it in a different culture. So whenever I was asked in my previous position in universities in particular to comment about this issue, I was always referring to the fact that we consider religious life in France as a private matter and separate from government and state affairs, which is not the case in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So that's the first thing. Now that I'm talking as a French citizen, and again, I'm talking to you as a diplomat posted in France for many years, you know and you witness the fact that Muslim people live a normal life in France. They are not threatened. Their rights and freedom is protected. And this illustration of these caricatures, cartoons, doesn't reflect the majority of the French community. So as a private individual, I am not comfortable with those cartoons when it comes to religion, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Buddhism. I find it a very sensitive topic. And you can understand why people in Pakistan are shocked, because this is something they are not used to see or apprehend. In France, it is part of, as you say, it's part of a culture. It doesn't mean that everybody agrees to it. And also in Pakistan, the vast Muslim majority is a very liberal society. It is not an extremist society. The demonstration we've seen recently in Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore originated from a small minority of people who are most of the time, like any other country, being manipulated by the social media, by whoever. In France, where you have demonstrations, also some demonstrations are being manipulated by minority, by social medias. But if you talk to the vast majority of Muslim Pakistani in Pakistan, they are very peaceful people. They are not going into dangerous or violent demonstrations. By far, the society of Pakistan is a peaceful society. It is not a violent society. So I would like to put it right. Mm-hmm. Violence that you see on the television, whether it's French television or Pakistani television, doesn't reflect the reality. It reflects what the media and social media want to see. They want to put the people against each other it is wrong. We have, through diplomacy, as we do, through diplomatic channels, we communicate on a peaceful manner. And this is what we have to pursue on the two sides.
Thank you very much, Mr. de Bussy. Your Excellency, you have there is another question from the public. Someone is asking, is the embassy in contact with the Pakistani community in France, and is there an association with for this community?
Sorry, I didn't get it. Association of
Pakistani people in France.
Association of Pakistani people in France.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Actually, one of the prime duties of any Pakistani embassy, and for that matter, this Pakistani embassy in Paris, is to maintain constant liaison with the overseas Pakistani community that we have. That is one of our prime responsibilities and one of the prime duties, actually. And the current government lays a lot of emphasis on it to provide as much assistance, as much facilitation as possible to the Pakistanis living abroad. So we maintain constant liaison with our community here. I've told you that there are around more than 100,000 people of Pakistani origin that live in France. We regularly meet them. We arrange Zoom meetings with them. We have a councillor section in which around 100 people or so every day they visit, and for councillor services they visit us at the embassy. So there's a constant communication, two-way communication, I would say, between the embassy and our community. And regarding the second aspect, that is there any association? Actually, there is not one association. There are many associations of Pakistani people living in France. Some are cultural in nature, some are geared towards one or two certain aspects of to look after certain projects. So there are numerous Pakistani associations of Pakistani people living in France.
Okay, I may ask one. And similarly, there is also association of the Friends of Pakistan in Paris, which is called the Cercle des Amis du Pakistan, which is an association formed which gathers people who have lived in Pakistan, French, most of them. A lot of them are diplomats, former ambassadors, businessmen, business ladies, I mean, from different circles, cultural people, from researchers, writers, musicians, etc. And so this Cercle des Amis du Pakistan, is based here in Paris, and promotes understanding culturally. There's mainly cultural understanding between the two countries.
And Mr. de Bussy, you lived 4 years in Pakistan, and I know that you have developed a lot of friendships, and it was you have very fond memories of Pakistan.
Yeah, it was my last posting, and I was not expecting so much in terms of cultural richness of this country. And when you mentioned especially the Buddhist heritage, it's nobody knows how much Buddhism heritage and sites and temples there are in Pakistan. In Islamabad alone, around the Taxila area, there are some 1,000 Buddhist temples. A lot have not been unearthed yet, and all over the country, the cultural heritage is vast. The Museum of Lahore and Karachi and Peshawar are huge in terms of collections, back to the 7000 BC, which is the Mohenjo-Daro civilization, which is one of the oldest civilization not yet totally documented. So there is a lot of prospect in terms of cultural heritage between our two countries. So yes, 4 years passed so fast, and I wished I could have extended my stay by a few more years to grab the whole magnitude of this country.
Thank you very much for this testimonial. Your Excellency, do you want to conclude the discussion? And I would like to thank also our students at Schiller International University and our faculty who were with us tonight. And maybe you want to say a few words to conclude this discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was really a pleasure to share some views about Pakistan-France relations, and also some ideas about Pakistan itself, its culture, its history, and its tourism, and so much potential that this country has. And I'm also grateful to Mr. André de Bussy for his views, and of course he has lived in Pakistan, he has experienced our country firsthand. I'm glad that he has some fond memories of Pakistan and its people. And I would also like to thank you, Madam Claire, for organizing this event. And it was a great pleasure to interacting with you both, and also with the faculty and students of the Schiller University. And I hope that in the future we'll continue this discussion. Lastly, I just want to add that this is the relationship between Pakistan and France, even though it has passed through difficult times in recent months, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to overcome this difficult phase, and soon we will be able to have normalize this relationship. Thank you.